ready when everybody else is. Good evening. Hi, welcome. Thank you very much to all of you who are joining us this evening. I am Julie Gray. I am a GP up in the northeast of Scotland and also a lifestyle medicine diplomat and one of the local regional directors for the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine. So this webinar is one of a series that we've been running for about 18 months now, where we try to deliver some education and information to you on various topics that are hopefully helpful in for the general public and for clinicians to help improve the lifestyle of the population. So that's really our kind of main goal. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out tonight to join one of our webinar series. We have, as per usual, we have scored again and got an absolutely fantastic topic, hopefully lots very interesting for you, and a fantastic speaker who will introduce to you in a minute. So yeah, as I say, we're myself and my colleague whom I wait to introduce will be around at the end of the webinar for questions and to just help facilitate those for you. And yeah, hope you enjoy, and I'm going to now hand you over to my very esteemed colleague, Dr. Adeze, MBE. I always like to add that in, so I'm proud to know her, who is, like me, also a GP and one of the regional directors for the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine. So over to you, Adeze.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're delighted to be here again with another webinar. And today we have a great topic. Let me just start with saying that our speaker was meant to be Kate Bede, but due to a family emergency, she's had to drop out. Just today, things have just happened so quickly in the last few hours. But we're really glad that her colleague is here, Kerry Bryant, who we'll be hearing from today. Suicide is a tough one. It's really a tough topic, but we're looking forward to picking up some things that can be helpful. Really, there's not limited to any group. The poor, the young, the old, everyone can be affected. So could you let us all know where you're tuning in from? I see some people in the chat. Ishraga, I can see you from Birmingham. Rob, Rita, who was in here first? There was Ella. Okay, Ella was here first, the dentist. Lucy, physiotherapy. So lots of different backgrounds, and that's really good to see, because like I said, suicide can affect anyone. I see someone who is a psychiatrist. Good to have you here. An AMP from Warwick. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we won't take more time. We'll hand over to Kerry to give us what she's got. And Kerry Bryant, she has a background as she's done social services, lots of involvement with vulnerable young children. Background of working with people who are suicidal. So I know she will have a lot to tell us we can learn from. It would have been great to hear from Kate herself because of her personal experience with her own sister. But I'm sure we'll resonate with what Kerry has to say, and we're really glad you're here, Kerry. So welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Adeze. And yes, apologies that Kate can't be with you. But Kate and I actually worked together over 10 years ago. And I actually worked with Kate before she lost her sister Liz to suicide. And it's a big part of why we both do this work now, because neither of us were clinicians, neither of us had any experience. Suicide wasn't something that we talked about. And, unfortunately, in Kate's life, it's now a huge part of her life and her story. And even tonight, really, before I share my slides with you, Kate would have, her mother's in hospital, and actually Kate would have shared that with her sister. That would have been something that they would have connected about. So when she messaged me today and said, Kerry, I'm still going to be at hospital, I said, absolutely, Kate, you know, I've got your back here. You don't need to worry about that. Because the ripple effect and the effect after losing someone's suicide, it just goes on and on. So we are both really passionate about making our communities safer and building communities where we are more open. So this isn't just about, I know we're here today, a lot of us in a professional capacity, but I'm not just talking to you in a professional capacity. This is about friends and family and colleagues and strangers. But it's also about you, you know. So I'm talking to you on a very human level tonight, and what I'm sharing with you is evidence-based. So Kate and I now work for Mind, the mental health charity. We actually work for our local Mind in Cambridgeshire, Peterborough and South Lincolnshire. And Cambridgeshire and Peterborough have put together, you know, a Stop Suicide campaign that really, you know, we'd love to see on a national level. So I'm just going to share with you tonight some of what we've learned, you know, and it is evidence-based. It's based on the research that's happened, but there's still a lot we don't know about suicide, you know. And one of the big things, so I am a trainer for them. I train specifically on suicide awareness, not just in the community though. I train in primary care. So the training that I deliver there is from a company called 4 Mental Health, and that's the number 4. I'll share some links with you. But they developed a clinical tool, but they've also developed a tool that I will, a non-clinical tool that I'll share with you tonight. So I'll stop talking and get on. I'm just going to share my slides with you. So the first thing I want to say really is, you know, this is difficult stuff. It's not stuff that we often talk about. And actually, can I have to do the double check because we don't do it. Can everyone, can you see those slides, Julie? Just give me.
Yes, I can see everything perfectly. Thank you, Kerry.
You know, just to do a quick tech check.
Yep.
So I work for Mind, the mental health charity. As I said, I had quite a varied career, but prior to this, Kate and I both worked within social care. I worked with vulnerable young people. I trained, safeguarding training was something that we did every single year. You know, it was just part of our general practice. Actually, I never did any sort of suicide awareness training. I never, it wasn't something that we really talked about. And it's definitely something, like it says there, it's something to talk about, it's something we need to become more comfortable, and to know, you know, what are the things, you know, we know how to keep ourselves safe on the roads, but how do we actually keep people who, you know, we're worried about or who are vulnerable? So before I get started, like I say, I just want to acknowledge that it is a tricky subject, and you know, you may have personal experience from loss or professional, and for that reason, you know, if you have been affected by suicide or if you've lost someone, just really take care of yourself in this session this evening. And if it doesn't feel like the right time, then please just try and reach out and talk to somebody, you know, if it does present any sort of feelings and makes you feel distressed. So I'll talk you through this short presentation, and I think you've got an opportunity at the end to ask questions or give me your thoughts all I would say, again, just another little safety, I always like to start with these safety. If you are going to share any experience, then our advice is that it's not necessarily to talk about how someone died or where they died, because it can be triggering, and just be conscious, you know, of, don't know everyone's story that is on the call. So, and we don't often know if someone has had a loss by suicide because we don't talk about it. There's still so much stigma around suicide. And what you'll notice during this session is that I will not use the term committed suicide, because language really matters. And I'm not saying that to be politically correct, but you'll only hear me talk about someone who died by suicide. So the only other thing that we commit is a crime. And suicide is no longer a criminal offence in this country. That changed actually in the UK in 1961 when the Suicide Act came into law. But we still live with that stigma. You know, no one ever, in no other way of dying would you use the term committed. And, you know, people, when we work, so we have a crisis support team and we work with people who are feeling suicidal. And, you know, we work with campaign makers, so they're people with lived experience of suicide, and they talk to us about, you know, that guilt and that shame and that judgment that comes with those suicidal thoughts. So even if that's one takeaway from today, you know, just that language, there's so much stigma around that language, and it silences people. It stops people from talking about their pain. So I'm going to share with you some statistics, and I'll be honest, I actually amended these because I had them UK based, and the statistics aren't going to be broad. There's not UK-wide statistics. The statistics are split for Scotland, which I know there's a lot of you, but I'm now recognising, because I picked this up late, that there's quite a few of you in England and Wales, and I had amended this slide. I also know that there's some of you, you know, I noticed someone in the comments then saying Dublin. So what I'm going to share with you next are the Scottish statistics, but I can also give you the statistics. And I'm only going to touch on these lightly, just really so that you can see the scale of the problem. And every presentation now tends to have some numbers and facts and figures, don't they? But these aren't facts and figures. These are real lives that have been lost. And they are people and families and friends that are affected. So I always am really mindful of that when I bring this up. You know, it's so much more. And like I say, I sort of doctored it slightly to include Scotland, because there is slightly different views and ways of collecting the data. And obviously in England and Wales, it's the coroner who does the report, and in Scotland, it's the prosecutor fiscal. But there's always a bit of a lag in the data anyway, one for the time it takes for either the prosecutor fiscal or the coroner's report to happen. So this is data from 2021 in Scotland. There was 753 probable suicides registered in Scotland. And in England and Wales, that was 5,583. But actually, when you look at a population base, Scotland actually per 100,000, there's far greater numbers. But what is similar is the breakdown in numbers. So that split between male and female is quite significant, and it's the same throughout the UK. And actually, it's pretty much the same worldwide. You'll see that roughly around 3/4 of those who die by suicide are males. And that opens up a lot of questions, doesn't it? It's a lot about the work that we do at the mental health charity Mind around how males access services. And And actually in Scotland, but also in the UK, we saw a decrease in suicide rates and in 2020. And actually, when it's a bit of an unknown really on that, but what we know is that that first lockdown and the pandemic had an impact, but actually it's not like we're saying, oh, actually we're on a downward trajectory, because the very fact at the moment that we're going through a cost of living crisis, we know that when the recession in 2008 hit, there's a direct link between that economic downturn and an increase in suicide rates. So I think we're all worried at the moment, you know, around how people are coping, the amount that people have to face. And obviously, you know, there's certain areas, you know, of deprivation, of economics. I think there's also this belief, you know, that actually this is only happening to people who have a severe mental health problem, and that's not the case. You know, like, and this is pretty much is what we're seeing throughout the UK, that actually 70% of people who die by suicide, they've not been in touch with mental health services in the year before their death. So it's easy for us to try to think that this is something that's happening over there. And actually, like you see right in the middle there, it's the single biggest killer of men under the age of 45. But actually where we see the highest risk groups are actually men aged 50 to 54 and women 45 to 49. And that data is quite similar in Scotland and England, Wales. And we're not really talking openly about it. No, we're not equipping people with, well, what do we do? You know, and that's a big part of the work that I do, is about building a safer community, giving people the confidence. There's so many myths still held about suicide, you know, that asking somebody plants the idea in their head. We know it's an absolute myth. But also, you know, the myth that, well, if someone's talking about suicide, that means it's a lessened risk if they're talking about it. Actually, that's not what the evidence provides us. We know that that's not the case. Just because someone is talking about their suicidal thoughts or their suicidal ideation, or, you know, some of our clients are very clear about that, have a plan in place, it doesn't lessen risk. And some of the recent research to come out, I'll share from NCUSH, is that we can't predict. You know, we cannot predict. We cannot say, well, I know they're not going to do it. I know they, you know, they won't. They don't mean it. No, I hear people all the time sort of saying, oh, this is attention seeking. This is connection seeking. This is someone who's in deep, deep pain. And actually when we, you know, because we don't talk about it, just those thoughts can move on. But what I want to really, that last point that I want to touch on is some research that was done that said 1 in 5 of us will experience suicidal thoughts in our lifetime. Now, I'm not saying that 1 in 5 of us would make any attempt on our life. That's not saying 1 in 5 of us, but just the thought, you know, how common. We actually think that that's probably a bit of a hidden statistic, that it's much higher than 1 in 5, because we can all connect to a time when life got tough, when things get hard, and we're where we think, I can't do this anymore. I think that's a really natural reaction to emotional pain and to life. But we don't talk about it. You know, we don't share that. I just noticed the question there. Absolutely, you know, I think that those rates struggle with the menopause. And again, that's just another thing that we're only starting to talk about. And actually those connections, you know, between the menopause and towards how that can, you know, create suicidal thinking. So the scale of the problem is big and we're not talking about it. But, you know, if only 30% of people have been in touch with mental health services, it begs the question of what is happening, you know, with those other people, what's going on? And again, what I'm sharing with you next is evidence-based. It's, you know, when someone dies by suicide in England and Wales, the coroner will look to find out what was going on in that person's life. What were those life events? And I'm just going to share a few of them, and this is by no means a definitive list, but these are some of the key themes that come out. So this isn't about mental illness. You know, these are things that we can all experience at some point in our lives. And I think we can all relate to these. You know, when life gets hard, when things get tough, and you can't see, you know, things are going to get better. And like I said, the current cost of crisis is a big concern as we can see the pressure that it puts on people. You know, it's immense and it's hard to see when it will end and how it will get better. And, you know, it's these life events and people come very stressed, very closed down, or, you know, can be quite reckless. But what we're talking about here is someone who's just lost all hope for the future. You know, someone who is desperate, lonely, broken, and overwhelmed. And, you know, I think one of the things Kate would have touched on was that is all of us. You know, none of us are immune to those things. So even though her sister Liz was an amazing clinician, she was still vulnerable. Because life stuff happened and it happens to us all, whether it's job stress or a relationship breakdown or physical. You know, being a professional doesn't prevent you from being vulnerable to emotional pain. And that's what connects all these things. And when the work I've done with people with lived experience, they don't focus on dying. They talk about escaping their emotional pain. And I think that's a very different way of looking at suicide. It is not about that person wanting to die. And it's a real shift in our thinking then, because rather than us feeling scared or feeling out of our depth and thinking, what do I do? That person in front of you, you know, doesn't want to die. They want to escape the emotional pain, and actually just connecting with that person and talking to them and listening to them, tell them, you know, giving them the space to talk about their emotional pain. But we've really got to take notice, and we've also got to be in the place ourselves where we're able to listen to that distress and we're able to connect with them. You know, and I've talked to a lot of professionals, you know, who admit that they've become a little desensitized, you know, and it's recognized. It's a recognized attribute when you look at the sort of 6 attributes of compassion. One of them is, you know, distress tolerance. So the first sort of note really that I would say is take notice, you know, take notice what's going on in someone's life. And don't underestimate how important it is, you know, just to share and just to talk. That in itself is a therapeutic intervention. What I'm going to just touch on next is some of the warning signs. And I think this is a really tricky one because as a society, we mask our feelings. You know, we're not open and honest about when we're struggling. So many times, you know, people will say, there wasn't any warning signs. That's where that first step, just take notice, you know, and actually step outside and don't make the judgment of, well, they've got a loving family, they've got a good job, they've, you know, got a nice house, they've got all these, you know, what we deem those sort of protective factors, that actually things can still be tough, and that emotional pain is like a physical pain. You're carrying it around, but you're not sharing it with anyone. So the warning signs, I think, are tricky, because, again, this isn't a definitive list. And some people will, just in the language that use, be talking about being a burden, be talking about feeling hopeless or helpless. Or they may even give you, we refer to them as invitations, where it's almost an invitation for you to ask. If someone's saying, what's the point? Or I don't want to be here anymore, or people would be better off without me. But also just taking notice, you know, for those people, Kate very much talks about, Liz just wasn't turning up to family events, but she was a doctor, she was busy, she wasn't making, you know, those social connections with people. She was very much just removing herself. And Kate said, I never checked in, Kerry. You know, I just thought she's got, you know, she's busy professionally, she's got a young family, and it is just about checking in. And for some people, while some people will completely, you know, remove themselves, they won't be responding to messages, other people can really see some quite reckless behaviours. But what we say is that any change can be a significant change. And like I said, you can't always put your finger on it. It's that gut feeling of something isn't right here. And rather than go through that process in our head that says, you know, oh, well, they would never do something like that. You know, that's not what they mean. They're just in a bad place, but things will get better. We've got to take notice, because for that person experiencing those suicidal thoughts, they may not have the words, and they may also feel very frightened and exhausted. But they equally might worry about the consequences if I tell you. You know, I did a session this morning with a social care team, and the majority of whom had never had any suicide awareness training. But actually they recognise that for some of their clients, they wouldn't want to talk openly about their suicidal feelings because they might feel there's a consequence. You know, it might mean, you know, and it's stopping people talking about their pain, but equally, you know, just feeling judged. Or just having had a bad experience of sharing with somebody, you know, somebody who ignored and sort of went, oh, you'll be okay, things will get better, you know, and not actually acknowledge the pain we're in. And that's why it's really important that we open to talking about suicide and actually asking somebody directly. It's a big part of our Stop Suicide campaign in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. But actually it's a message that has no sort of boundaries. Again, language matters. You know, we're very clear that we have to ask directly. You know, if you skirt around the topic, it's your ability to say the word suicide and to say, I can see how difficult things are for you right now. I can see how much distress you're in. Are you having suicidal thoughts? Are you feeling suicidal? It's the right thing to do, because it tells that person as well that I'm okay talking about this and you can talk to me about it. But once you've asked, it's like, well, what happens next? And I know there's a whole range of people on the call today. So for clinicians, you know, is there a clinical tool that you use? But actually, what can we all do? what are the things that we can all do? And I think what tends to happen here is that people worry about, not saying the right thing. So I don't want things, I don't want to make things worse. And actually that silence is stopping us from letting people share their emotional pain. And a big part of it is not knowing what to do next, And the myth that actually you might put the idea in somebody's head, or just the judgment that we have that, well, they wouldn't do something like that. I'll touch on a book. I'll try and share a link at the end. It's called When It's Darkest. It was written by Professor Rory O'Connor. And if anyone saw the BBC documentary that Roman Kemp did on our silent emergency, Professor Rory O'Connor is based at Glasgow University, and he's one of the leading researchers in suicide. He actually wrote this book in lockdown, and it's not an academic book. It's very much both his professional and personal experience, and it's very, the messages there are the same. You have to be prepared to ask somebody directly about their pain. But then it's about, well, what do we do next? What happens next? And what I'm going to share with you next is, how do we support someone who's in emotional pain? And there might be a number of different routes here. For someone who is in absolute crisis, it might mean that they need immediate care. But what we also know, and I think we're seeing throughout the media, is that actually accessing that care might not be, for some people, depending on, how suicidal they are, that might not be something that happens straight away. And how do we keep someone safe? And so what I'm going to share with you is not a clinical tool. And you may have seen there's quite a few tools on the market now, but stayingsafe.net is a tool that we use in our crisis support team, but actually it's a tool that any of us can use. Safety planning is something that we can all do, and it's a way that we can support somebody through a difficult time. There's a couple of caveats in safety planning. It's not a form-filling exercise. It's not something that you would just give to a person. It may take some time, but it's about actually giving that person the resources and the things that they can do for themselves. So we say it should be co-produced. Like I say, there are other apps. But the reason we use stayingsafe.net is that it was developed for NHS England. It was commissioned by For Mental Health. And again, I'll share the For Mental Health website with you, because they do a wide range of suicide awareness and response training for clinicians, both at primary and secondary care. And they do have a clinical tool, but this safety planning is what I use in the community, and it's actually something that we can all do. They're developing an app at the moment, but if you go onto the stayingsafe.net website, it will actually give you an electronic version of the safety plan. And the idea of the safety plan is it's very much a strength-based. It's giving that person the tools to build up their ability to interrupt those suicidal thoughts, because those thoughts aren't 24/7, but when they do come and they're distressing, it's about interrupting those thoughts, because those are things that we know make a difference. So that's why at railway stations, and at key places, you may see, the Samaritans number and helpline numbers, because it's about interrupting those thoughts. So the first thing it does is it talks about getting through right now. So in that moment, when those suicidal thoughts are happening, what can you do to get through right now? And I make no apology for how simple some of the suggestions you'll see on the website are, because it is about empowering that person. And for some of the clients that we have, you know, it's just about taking a walk, about getting some fresh air. It's about listening to some music. It is about those protective factors, you know, either pictures of places or people or pets, we know are a huge protective factor. But it's also about making your situation safer. So if they had been gathering means, if they had been, you know, hoarding medication, it's actually about talking about that. Can you give that to me? You know, can we change? What can we do to change that? And it's recording this all in one place. And anyone, you know, you just have to connect with that person, hear their pain, and then just sit with them. And really, our thinking is that shouldn't all of us have a safety plan? You know, even if you think now and have a little bit of time to reflect on, well, what are the things that I do for myself? You know, what are the things I do to keep myself safe? And then it goes through, actually, what are the things you can do to lift and calm your mood? And again, this might be quite difficult for some people. It might take them some time to really think about, because they've lost sort of that hope and that connection. And the final part of safety planning really is the different levels of support that you may require. And really the first one is that people to support you. So it's not necessarily people that you share your emotional distress with, but they're just people that are a positive impact on you and that you like to be around and that you like to spend time with. And it's about putting their details there. And then that second part really is, well, who can you talk to? And for that, you know, it is for some people reaching out to family and friends, but recognizing that not everyone has that. And on this part, it will give you all the helpline numbers, Samaritans, you know, the text numbers, ourselves at Mind, but you can put local numbers in there as well. And then it does, the final part is that emergency professional support. So if they are under the care of a mental health team, their GP's number, you know, any support workers that they have, who are the people? Because this really is about creating a safety net, and you should then share that safety plan with as many people as possible. So this isn't about, you know, our rule tends to be confidentiality doesn't apply to suicide. The more people that you can share it with, their family, their friends, and that's why you'll have seen in the media recently the huge campaigns, especially around universities, for universities to share with family if they've got concerns over a student, you know. But actually, one of the things is like, let's all think about, you know, what are those things? So I would encourage you to have a look at the stayingsafe.net website. This resource has been pulled together by leading clinicians and research, but also with people with lived experience. And one of the first videos you'll see is someone called Johnny Benjamin. And he was the stranger on the bridge where Johnny went to Westminster Bridge. He was feeling very suicidal. And he spoke to a stranger who actually, it was a life-saving intervention. And that's the whole idea, that all of us can be that person. I'm really conscious of time now as well. Once I get started, I tend to go, where do I stop? But the final part really, I'm not going to share this video with you, but I will, sorry, send the link because it's quite powerful, but it is 6 minutes long. But I will share the link out. It's Liz's story, really, and it's what came after that. Kate features in the video because, like I said, I'm not just speaking to you as professionals. This has resounding impacts, and it's for everyone. But I will share that link because I think it's worth looking at. And then the final part really is, I'm going to start it, is really to look after yourself. Which sounds, you know, I speak to so many professionals who just see that as part of, this is just the work that we do, you know. But it's really vital that you do make time for you, for your friends and family, for your hobbies, you know, for your sort of safety plan, for the things, for your well-being, the things that calm you and relax you and enable you to continue doing the work that you do. Because it is hard and it is draining, and we know that it can really impact, you know, if you are supporting someone who's suicidal. And I've spoken to a lot of professionals who said, I can do this in a professional capacity, Kerry, but if this was my friends and family, I think that's the bit that we need to connect. This is everybody. You know, we can't put it in a box. You know, we can look at where there's higher risk, but actually this is everyone. So my final part is really a couple of resources that I think is worth if you wanted to look in. The You OK Doc, which is the charity that Kate's cousin put together after Liz's death. There's a brilliant podcast as well that Kate features in, but they've done multiple podcasts just around well-being for doctors. If you wanted to look more at some of the research that's happening, you can look at the National Confidential Inquiry into Suicide and Safety and Mental Health. They do some really good little webinars and sort of 1 hour talks, especially when they release any sort of new research and data. They tend to do free webinars on that. And then I've just put the stayingsafe.net website on that was developed by For Mental Health. So I've sort of gone a little bit over what I said, but we've still got time if there was anything. So slightly different maybe than Kate would have done because she hadn't shared her slides with me. But what I'll do is I'm going to take some, I'm just going to take a moment now just to try and pop some of those links in the chat for us. But if anyone did have any questions that they wanted to ask, I'm just going to stop sharing, then please do, and I will try my best now to get you some links I've promised you.
Kerry, thank you so much for that. It's really, really interesting. I think certainly, as you know, I see we have quite a mix and spectrum of people and backgrounds and disciplines here. So I'm sure this has probably been helpful for everybody in a different capacity. For myself, obviously my experience of suicide is largely as a clinician, and I think it's something that we as clinicians are trained in some very basic skills to try and assess for. We know the resources to use, but we're quite detached from it, perhaps, you know, emotionally. And something that has struck me of late, certainly since the pandemic, and as I say, I'm just using kind of this as an example, and I'm sure everybody who have got things that they want to share, but one of the things that I've been very aware of is there's been a much higher suicide rate with doctors, and in particular female doctors. certainly in the last couple of years, and perhaps that is just we're more aware of it because, you know, we're aware of a lot more things because of social media and technology and things, or perhaps it is because it is increasing because of just higher pressures in life, which we all know. You know, there's so much more stress now. People are a lot more overwhelmed. People have so much coming at them. So I think people struggle to cope. And I think what I really found helpful to take home from your talk there was not just going in and doing my job day to day with my patients, but actually it was a really good reminder to sometimes pause and look around me at my colleagues. You know, day to day, some of them, you know, they're struggling a bit, they're stressed, you know, we'll be a bit kind for them till as you know, a bit kind to them for a little while, and maybe, you know, do a couple of appointments for them, and they'll be fine. But, you know, maybe actually take that a little bit more seriously. And likewise, as you say, I think a lot of people since the pandemic have had a reduction in their social connections. Everybody's life has changed. We've had a huge upheaval, and a lot of people you speak to will say they've actually just drifted a little bit from family, from friends, and we've all become very consumed in our own stresses. And I think you're right, we need to sometimes stop and look around us and think, you know, actually, what is everybody else okay? You know, because you know, it's very easy to get absorbed in your own stresses in your own life that you forget to notice people around you. And you know, that if we would take that would be too late. So yeah, so I think that was very, very useful, and to just raise that awareness and give us some skills as human beings and not just as a clinician. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I do. Obviously, I do. It's different training for GPs because there is a clinical tool that and there's many out there. I think that's part of the problem as well. And some of them are quite outdated in their thinking. But actually, we're not trying to put this all on, you know, primary care and, you know, mental health services, because like we know it's so much wider than that. And it's about our communities. It's about those connections that we build. You know, for me, I want to get into voluntary, you know, community groups where they're really the people that are talking to some vulnerable people, and start actually, you know, giving people just that confidence. I describe, you know, this sort of level as just that first aid type intervention, just being able to have that conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kerry. That was great. And may I say that you have a really calm voice. I just enjoyed listening to you there. That was really good. I think one of the things that really I think is really sad about this is that, you know, when you said that up to 70% of the people haven't even been in touch with, you know, their GP or anyone medical. That's really, I think that's sad, you know. But that's what makes this talk really relevant for the public, because the people, you know, dying by suicide and are not coming to us really, you know, they're out there in the community. So this talk is really important for the public. And I love the emphasis you made on, you know, not using the word commit suicide. We tend to say things like that, but it's just like we'll say someone died of hypertension or stroke. Someone died of suicide. That's just what it is. We can't say commit like they've done some crime or anything, you know. So thank you, really useful talk. We have some questions in the chat. There's one there says, such an excellent and important talk. Thank you. Any advice how to approach a very introvert person you're worried about, but always says, I'm fine? What would you say?
I think that's where asking directly, you know, because often when we skirt around that, you know, so you can say, I'm really worried about you. This is where masking comes in as well. And I think this is where there's so much complexity around suicide, in that, you know, people may not open up, but rather than saying, I'm worried about you, you know, like, oh, you don't seem yourself, actually being able to say, you know, are you having suicidal thoughts? You can talk to me about this. I'm okay. I know it's really hard stuff, but you know, I want you to know that I'm here and I will listen. Because it is about that connection. One of the other things that I tend to share with people is Brené Brown does a brilliant video on empathy, because often what we tend to do in those situations is we go into solution mode. We want to fix things and we want to make it better. And so rather than just listening to someone's emotional pain, we start trying to give them advice on, have you tried this? Have you done that? What about that? Have you talked to this? And whilst there's maybe some great signposting that we do, actually it disconnects us from that person, and it stops that person from really sharing their emotional pain because they think, don't understand, you don't get it. And we've probably all been in that situation as well, where we're trying to share something that's difficult with somebody and they're trying to tell us how we can make it better. And you just shut down then. You stop talking about that because you think, you're not listening to me. You've not heard what I've got to say. And so it's really hard, I think, especially for a lot of professionals who, you know, one, are very time restricted. And I think that's where we are really lucky in our crisis support team, but that's why as friends and family, we can give them that time. You know, we give anyone coming to our crisis support team, we give them 2 hours to just be able to say without any judgment. And so I think that's a big part of it as well, really recognising ourselves that you can't necessarily fix their problems, you know, straight away. You can't provide an instant fix, but you can let them know that there is hope. And, you know, when I say hope, you know, we talk about hold on, pain ends. And I think that's a really lovely way of going, because it does, because life can get better. And, you know, we work with people who they haven't felt, you know, they have made attempts on their life, and you can come back from that and not feel suicidal. It is, you know, it is not just a one way. Life can get better, but we've got to be able to listen to people and to acknowledge the pain that they're in. I'm just going to double check on the queue. What clinical tool would you recommend for GPs, please? Oh, I have to put a major caveat on that, because obviously I don't know all the clinical tools, but what I do know is that a lot of the clinical tools very much go on a risk assessment, where they're trying to say, oh, on a level of 1 to 10, doesn't work. You know, NCISH, when you look at the research, it doesn't work. You cannot predict, you know, all you can do in that moment is mitigate. And that's why safety planning is so vital. What are the things you can do to keep that person safe? The tool that we use is called SafeTool. It was developed by For Mental Health. It is a continuum. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback. Hope you're not. It's a continuum. It doesn't try and stay. Really, you know, the research is showing we have to move away from this idea of these people are high risk and these are low risk, because you can't predict that. And the SafeTool really is a framework for a conversation, because lots of clinicians haven't had, you know, suicide awareness training. It's not been part of, you know, their sort of practice. So we use SafeTool in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. I know that there's other, you know, because it's available, but it's really a framework for a conversation, and it takes you through that sort of continuum, and then there's a response as well. So again, if it's on, it was developed by For Mental Health. But I wouldn't want to, you know, for me, I would say if you're opening clinical tools that are trying to put a number to it, this isn't something that we can put a number to. That, and it's quite old fashioned. If you read the NCISH research that's been done, they really are trying to move away from that sort of high risk, low risk, you know, mark out of 10 type thing, and really it's about the individual in front of you. It's
Yeah.
about their experience and their trauma, and it's about not judging, because what is a trauma for one person, a crisis, is completely different from another.
Yeah. There's an important question there. How do you help someone with chronic mental health issues who often say they are suicidal? You know, we have patients like that who are always saying they're suicidal, always, you know, so there's a tendency almost to not take them seriously, you know, because they're always saying that, you know. So this person is asking, are they less risk of actual suicide if they often say they're suicidal?
I think that's where you have to understand, you know, what is driving those suicidal thoughts, and talk to them about that emotional pain. Now, there's sort of caveat, because obviously there are some mental health conditions that come with suicidal sort of ideation and talking, and that may need a lot more, you know, support, and may need sort of specialist help. And I'm talking really in terms of, so I think it is about understanding, you know, what is the condition. But for, you know, like we said there, for the majority of people, you're dealing with those that have not been, you know, in touch. But yeah, I think it is, you know, really connecting on what is driving that, because it's about emotional pain. And, you know, if we often ask our clients at the sanctuary, you know, if I could take that pain away, if I could let you sleep for, you know, 2 weeks, if, you know, would you still want to die? The answer is, you know, no, I just want the pain to end. So I think really understanding what's driving that, and there's real complexity in there, you know, because there could be, you know, previous trauma. We know that, you know, addiction, drugs and alcohol, and, you know, this is a complex, you know, I'm not trying to, I know I put up all those relationships, and it's not just a clean little box, isn't it? So for some people, there's multiple layers driving that suicidal thinking. I'm really aware of the time now.
Yeah. Wow. I'm sure the questions could go on and on and on. Really a nice comment there by Shraga. Thank you. This is a brilliant talk. Being a GP, I want to say that looking after colleagues is really important, but really difficult. Sadly, doctors are among the highest groups at risk of suicide, but they know all of this and still see no hope. I mean, even the doctors themselves, you know, so it's a tough one, but hopefully we've picked up some skills, some, you know, more information tonight to help us support people around us. Before you go, the statistics for the men was so much higher than the women. You know, it was like 3 times
3
or
quarters.
so. Yeah. So is this due to the traditional view that men should be brave and not cry and not show pain, or what's, you know, just briefly, what do you think?
So I think there is a whole load of the societal pressures. I think what grabs me on it is that actually, whilst we're getting better at talking openly about our mental health, this is still very much affecting young people. But that difference also tends to be men tend to use more lethal methods. So actually, what we don't have is, we don't have complete data on attempts, you know, because how do you define what an attempt was, you know, and that is an area that we're sort of looking into, because every county now, and as Scotland does as well, has to have a suicide prevention strategy. But on the attempts, actually what we are seeing is that there's more females that make an attempt. But for males, I think it's complex as well. Females tend to have more help-seeking behaviours, so they will reach out and they will talk. And, you know, like everyone tends to say, you know, males don't talk about their feelings, they don't share. But there's also the pressure of, especially in those age groups, where you should be at your life at that point, what success you should have, and what, you know, all those sort of norms. So when they are taken away, but it's very complex, you know. I think there's there's a whole lot of research, there's a lot more research, that we need to do, but it's not an area that, again, has got a huge amount of funding. But I would sort of have a look, because NCISH definitely drive a lot of not just the research, but the change in practice and policy at a government level.
I guess as well, we don't even always know of some of those failed attempts. People that frequently spoken to patients that have said to me, "Oh, I did try to do this once," and there's nothing documented about that. So there's nowhere to research it. So yeah, I guess we don't know, as you say, is it a case of that men are just more successful in actually doing it because they pick more lethal ways, or what would be interesting to know what the ratio of female attempts were compared to actually male attempts, and see if there's less of a discrepancy. So yeah.
Oh, thank you. Someone's just said, I think your talk should be hospital trust and GPs. I literally would go anywhere now. I mean, it'd be great if we could do something. There's more there is more press coverage now around suicide. Obviously, the death of Caroline Flack really got people talking. And Roman Kemp, like I mentioned, I think he's actually about to do another. He's definitely keeping the conversation going. But yeah, I definitely think it should be part of training for GPs, practice, and in social care. Like I said, I looked after children, really vulnerable young people, and I never had any sort of training on suicide and how they were thinking. But anyway, I want to make sure that I will stop, because it's your evening and you need to rest and look after yourself, because that's what I told you to do.
Oh, we will definitely take that advice on board, Kerry. Thank you. Yeah, I'll go and tell my husband to look after the kids now, because you told me I had to rest. So. Oh, fantastic. No, I was absolutely brilliant, Kerry. Really enjoyed your talk. And again, we cannot thank you enough for stepping in so last minute. I think it's probably, I think we can speak for the people that have logged in. There's, you can see the feedback, a lot of people found that so helpful and beneficial. So thank you so much again. So yeah, I'll hand over to you, Daisy, if you want to finish up.
Yeah, thanks. It's been great, and really nothing more to say. I see a few more questions, but time is up, so we better round up. Kerry, how can people reach you or your group if they want you to come and speak to them? Or
so the difficulty being is, as I work for a charity, but it is actually there is potential. I'll just give them my email address.
Put your link there or something, so people can reach you if they need to. But yes, we're really grateful. Thank you for coming, and thank you everyone that tuned in. I see a lot of compliments there. Kerry, you did a great job. So that's Kerry's email. If you need to reach her or the organization, please take a snapshot. And we'll be closing now. So we'll have another webinar not too long from now. Will let us all know the next topic, and we hope to keep doing this and bringing you, useful talks. So in case you came in late, we're from the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine. If you're interested in lifestyle medicine, please get in touch. If you go to, I think it's www.bslm.co.uk, you can reach us through that. Okay, there's the link there. It's .org.uk. Please get in touch. Lifestyle medicine is life-saving, to be honest. It's just great that people know how they can use their lifestyles to make themselves better. So that's all we have for you tonight. Thank you again for tuning in, and see you again shortly. Bye for now.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening. Bye.